family.
Okay. I'm going to...
You're not on hacker level.
I'm going to start streaming. I'm going to start recording. I'm going to post this video. I'm going to link the video to y'all also. That seems important.
Thank you.
Hey.
Who are Hobbs and Shaw?
Well, they're friends and they're not family as far as I'm concerned.
Well, they have families of their own.
They do, but
I'm sure they're friends.
I hate that they play the family card in that fucking trailer. I hate it. It's infuriating to me.
You've answered my question because, like, I thought, are these people I'm supposed to know from like Twitter or something?
I mean,
that like you all want to grab dinner with or something, and I just don't know them, or I do know them and I forgot about them.
That's very funny. That's conceptually very funny.
But I now know from context clues that this is a new Fast and the Furious movie.
What's the clue that gave it away?
Friends and family.
You don't say.
You should watch those movies, Keith.
I've seen 2 of them. I liked the 2 that I've seen. I saw 5 and 6.
Good ones.
Or maybe 4 and 5. I definitely saw 5.
How many was The Rock in?
The Rock was in both of them.
5 and 6.
5 and 6.
5 and 6? Yeah. And had, I think, one of the funniest lines that I've ever heard in a movie, and it's when someone was giving him bad news and he said, "Give me the veggies."
It's good.
Oh, that's so good. That's so good.
This is a
like,
Dwayne
you know, I like my dessert first.
That's as an introductory scene for that character, it's incredible. The rating is good. It's fantastic.
I actually watched that with Allie.
Oh.
And I'm now remembering that I also laughed so fucking hard at there's just some line of Vin Diesel's where I couldn't understand a single word he said. He just sounded like he mumbled for like 8 seconds. Do you remember what this was? It was near the end of the movie. Yeah, like
was it
forever
when
ago.
He's in the back of the car after his friend dies?
I think
and
so.
He's like,
Oh, was that one more time?
Yeah, he said
he's like,
and like no one was like, we need to take that again.
Good enough.
Good.
Well, he was sad.
It's about the tone of his voice. The words here weren't important.
No, just the
Diesel
feel.
does not do 2 takes.
Yeah, well,
Amateurs like you do 2 takes.
Or maybe that was a second take, and that they didn't feel comfortable saying, like, we need to take that again.
No,
because
maybe
you didn't say any words.
I think it was like that home movie scene where they did like 30 takes, and each time the director was like, "I need more emotion. I need you I need you to just be just like groveling at the screen, just sobbing."
At some point, more emotion does mean fewer words.
Yes. Someone should do a home movies rewatch podcast. Is the thing I keep telling myself.
Maybe somebody should.
I just think it's a good idea. That's all.
What an idea.
Yeah, but I was very nervous that this was going to be potentially embarrassing because I said, "Who are Hobbs and Shaw?" Because you're talking about the movie,
right?
And you said, "We'll explain on call." and I was like, "Oh my god, am I forgetting like a friend that I had?"
No.
Hey, are we doing a? Are we?
Yeah, we should clap. We should do a clap.
Oh,
I don't know yet. I don't think like soon. In our lives, probably. Are we allowed to? What?
Are you allowed to?
Yeah. Yeah. Why wouldn't I be? I got all that fixed. I got paperwork. I do whatever the fuck I want if it says friends at the table on it. Basically.
License to kill.
Yeah.
I hope everyone likes our new website, Friends at the Table Gaming.
All right, that I probably couldn't do. But even there, I could probably... Because, like, if we were... we'll talk off mic. There's stuff I'm not doing there anymore, and so it wouldn't be a conflict of interest. The way it used to would have been, you know?
It's not in their interest anymore. So
fucking apparently not. It's certainly still mine. What you do
call
today?
It Fat Point.
We're not calling it Fat Point. Let's do a clap and do it at 25.
Sure.
I heard a mic stand hit. I heard a mic stand hit. Are we good?
I think we're
I think
probably
that was my
fine.
speaker. That wasn't my mic stand.
Okay.
No.
I have my speaker on top of my power supply, which is not the number one idea, but it works for me.
You want to put the things that get hottest on top of each other.
Yeah, really keep the heat away from other stuff.
My power supply is smooth and cool to the touch, so no issues.
No, yeah, you're probably fine. These things do not take a lot of power at all.
Yeah.
And yet they still have a gigantic power brick.
Yeah, they do. I don't understand it. Well, I guess
sorted in there.
Mine has that. My mixer has that built into it, so I forgot how big and cumbersome those are for no reason.
I want to clear off my desk. I want to just throw everything away. I want to start fresh in my life.
What do you with
everything?
Sound recording? Oh, everything?
Just everything. Not this. This is good. I'll keep this. But this bed, this desk, this room. You
just need
getting a new bed is a really great idea.
Yeah, I've had this one for 4 years now, I guess, which is not long. So it's fine. It's a fine bed, but it's past the honeymoon phase of wow, I got this new bed.
Yeah.
So. Maybe just get a new frame, some new sheets, and then you'll feel
I am about to get new sheets. I'm I've been thinking about it for a month.
Ooh, are you researching sheets?
I got really good sheets last time. And I loved them so much, and so I'm going to get them again. And I'm going to get them so that they're delivered this week, and I'm going to put them on before I go to E3, and I'm not going to sleep on them once. And I'm going to come home, and they're going to be fresh. My bed is going to be made. I'm going to get home from E3, and I'm going to be like, this is the fucking best.
I read this whole thing about how thread counts in sheets are bullshit.
Yeah,
and I got to the end of the article. Well, I got to the end of the article, and it was some fucking sheets company that was... don't worry, low thread counts are actually great.
All right, well, the thing that I realized was the sheets that I ended up really liking did not necessarily have a high thread count. But it was about the material they were made with and shit like that. And so that ended up being a much more important thing. I'm trying to find the name of the sheets.
I think that's probably true.
I'm sure it matters a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's wild. Okay. People just latch on this is how we sell sheets now is thread counts.
Right. This is what I got were the Mazzotti luxury bed sheet set, soft and comfortable, 1800 prestige collection, brushed microfiber bedding. And I really like it. It's just
1800 prestige?
So it's like you beat Call of Duty multiplayer, you get to level 50 1800 times. And then that's prestige 1800. That's even know that.
What is the symbol is so big at that point that your emblem takes up most of the screen?
It's the whole screen. That's why it's such an achievement because you can't see.
All you can see is your P90, and that's it.
And that is it. I don't think this has I don't know that there's a thread count listed here because it's microfiber, and I don't know that that's how microfiber works. I don't know. Anyway.
Oh, microfiber sheets. That sounds like it gets hot.
Well, no. So they are, quote, warm and cuddly in the winter and cool in the summer, like a cozy T-shirt.
Damn,
that is exactly right. Yeah. Anyway, we should do a podcast about tips at the table, right? Is that a thing we should do?
Tip 1, get a good night's sleep on some nice sheets from whatever
the fuck I just said.
Call of Duty sheets.
Yeah, don't do that. Are there Call of Duty sheets?
Oh, there's gotta be.
Call of Duty bedding.
There's Metroid sheets for sure.
Allie, I just need you to know I typed in Call of Duty bedding. Top hit was Amazon.com. That was an ad though. The top natural hit, organic hit, Call of Duty bedding, Target.
Listen. I've bought sheets from Target. I know that they have a teen section. It is what it is.
I don't see
Call of Duty modern sleepwear.
Call of Duty Black Ops 5 duvet cover. Call of Duty Broken Skull cover set. These are bad. I'm gonna close these.
Yeah, I mean, if the cool franchises that I like don't have good merch, the ones that I don't like aren't gonna have good merch. If I can't even get like a good Mass Effect hoodie, I'm not gonna be able to get good Call of Duty bed sheets.
There used to be good Mass Effect hoodies.
There was maybe one that was fine.
Yeah.
There was a horrible one, then there was a good one, and then they just kept coming out with good ones. And now no more.
Really? Oh,
Yeah, the like first generation Mass Effect hoodie was not good.
maybe that's probably the one that I'm remembering.
Yeah.
Okay.
No good Star Wars hoodies.
What? Shut up. Yes, there are.
Yo,
They're
go
very hard
go
to find.
Galaxy's Edge. It's got all the good merch.
It's got out the good. Well, I just find.
Well, there's no good hoodies.
I feel like the stuff that I see, it's always like, here's like, this is a, this character's famous jacket, and then also it has a big Star Wars logo on it.
No, well,
And I just hate
Keith,
that.
we'll go. If you need a, if you need a Star Wars stylist,
Oh, finally, Allie, you're calling.
I consider myself a little bit of a pro in this area. I look at a lot of the things that are out there.
Congrats,
and I
by
can
the
get
way,
them for you together.
on bringing your OC
This,
with
I
you.
can also do this for houses. Just
Good.
Star Wars houses or just any kind of house?
any kind of house, but with Star Wars home goods.
Can I get an update? How was Galaxy's Edge? How did
It
it
was
feel?
good.
Yeah.
It was I thought it felt great.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
It's so immersive. You don't feel like you're in Disneyland. It's
Mhm.
it's really something.
Yeah.
I'm very happy for both of you. I'm very happy that you picked the same holocron and kyber crystal.
I made us think about the kyber crystal because I think that they're fake and not real. That's not how lightsabers work.
What?
But then I
Okay.
learned that that's how you make the holocron work, is with the kyber crystal.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. The kyber crystal is for the... Right. Okay.
Also, I don't think you get to tell Star Wars how lightsabers
I
work.
do or should. If I don't, then it should be me.
All right. Welcome to Tips of the Table, an RPG podcast focused on critical questions, hopefully smart answers, and fun interactions between good friends. I'm your host, Austin Walker. Joining me this month, Ali Akampora.
Hi, my name is Allie. You can find me at Allie_West on Twitter.com.
Keith
And
Jake.
thanks for listening.
Oh, great. Bye. Bye, everybody. That was it. Thanks for listening. Keith J. Carberry.
Even if that was how lightsabers work, kyber crystals still aren't used to activate holocrons. That's never been what that was for.
The rest of this is going to be in a clapcast. People are going to... Art Martinez Temple.
Hey, you can find me on Twitter at Atebble and check out my dope kyber crystal activated holocron sitting on my desk right now, flying in the face of Keith's weird apostasy.
Apostasy, which is also the name of the new Friends at the Table restaurant that we announced recently.
Ooh.
Wait, did that make the cut? Was that in?
Themed
It
restaurant.
wasn't there, yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah.
It's very funny. You should listen to it with the music. It's hilarious.
Oh, that sounds great. There was music around it. Perfect. Love it.
Yeah.
Love it. As always, we are here to answer your questions and to dig into your dilemmas. We are going to start doing that right away because we got a bunch of them. This one comes in from Alexis, who says, I've been GMing on and off with a group of friends for about a year. We tend to have a lot of trouble keeping everyone engaged and interested in the characters, even though out of play, we all seem to be on the same page. We've had discussions about what type of game we'd like to play, character-driven with a strong story, but with room for goofy stuff, the kind of characters everyone is bringing, and how individual players most enjoy contributing to the story. However, when it comes time for a session, most of my prompts, even the leading ones that recommend clear action, are met with silence, and usually one of the characters doing something random and unrelated. The five of us have been very close friends for many years, so I don't think it's an issue of players lacking confidence. Is my campaign really so boring that the players would rather do absolutely anything other than engage with NPCs, locations, and situations? How can I help my players actually play the game they're telling me that they want? My first thing here is like to being friends with people for a long time does not necessarily mean that switching into like telling tabletop role-playing game stories together is going to be easy. I think like if I think back to like pitching Allie and Janine on the pre-Friends at the Table campaign I was going to run for them, that game would have been extremely this. Despite being very good friends with Allie and Janine, it very much would have been me being like, so what do you do? And then like crossing my fingers and hoping that the awkwardness would dissipate, you know? I've had that experience with other people who come to the hobby for the first time that like I've been lifelong friends with them, but they've never done this before. And so, and especially if they're not like already a performer in some way, they're not doing podcasts, they're not like doing stage, they're not doing theater, like they don't inhabit characters in that way. So I would say the first thing is like try to disconnect that expectation or try to like push back that expectation that just because you're really good friends that should be enough for players. Players are shy. It's hard and risky. It feels scary to do a thing because what if you're doing the wrong thing? And so that's my first suggestion. I'm curious if other people here have like a gut response to Alexis's question.
Is the like general thing of like people will answer something when asked a question about what they want always what they actually want?
Right. It isn't. Those two things don't always overlap exactly.
Right. That like saying that they're not playing. What is the how can my players actually play the game they're telling me that they want? They are telling you two different things about what they want.
Right.
Like they're telling you something and their actions are also telling you something, and you have to like figure out what's the real there.
Right. Find that through line between those two things. And I think for me, the first step is to, if you have to err in one direction, you should be erring towards what they're actually doing at the table. So if you say that one of the players does something random and unrelated, pull on that string. Let them say like, okay, cool, yes, and, right? Like keep building out what that random and unrelated thing is. And eventually maybe you're able to wrap back around to what their stated like intentions or vision for the campaign is. But if they are doing something, like have that something comes from somewhere, even if it's just like, I'm going to just throw something out. Like that throwing something out is still based in some instinct of theirs as a player. And so like that gives you some tiny foothold by which you can start the process of bringing them out of the, bring them into the game rather.
Another thing is, we had a question that was fairly similar, or had like a similar spirit to this, a couple times ago that I was on, and so some of the same things apply, I think, for me, and I have experience of both, like doing a worse job than I would have wanted being a GM, and then also playing with a GM that wasn't doing what I was interested in, and it seems like it's because they're your friends and because you have had conversations about like what you do want to see, like they're showing you something different than what they're telling you, but they did say like we're interested in this. So I think to me, like, I guess this is sort of what Austin was saying, is like take what they're doing, and I'm gonna start over, not all the way.
Okay.
Like when my players would do something that I was like annoyed by during me being the worst GM that I had ever been, I would just like get annoyed and try to move past it.
Yeah.
But like instead of moving past it, you can ground that in what you're trying to do. Like give it the same stakes as if it wasn't what you consider like a random piece of nonsense. Like you can, instead of it's hard, like if it's really like
off the
silly
wall,
and goofy
right,
and off the wall,
right.
Like that might be harder, but they at least are ostensibly down for what you're trying to do. So if like maybe trying to push them towards it by, and I don't know that you're doing this, but by not discounting or discarding what they're bringing.
It can be really easy to do that. It can be really easy to be like, I've prepped all this fucking stuff. Even if you've done the kind of like open-ended prep where you're like, all I've done is build a location and then some NPCs and like some stakes and like hope I don't have like a railroady adventure plan, but I have a world built and they just don't want to deal with any of it. They want to go fishing. Like, go do the fishing game. Figure out 2d6 plus decks to do some fucking fishing, and like what happens when this group of goofballs goes fishing together.
Also, maybe the guy that was gonna be in the tavern is at the lake.
Yes,
also,
yes.
Right,
So that is that is like such a good idea. Yeah. I do that a lot. I do that a lot with y'all, where it's like, I'm going to slide this NPC out of their place. They're in my playbook. They're in my, like, it's like I have a briefcase filled with pieces, right? And I, as the GM, you are moving across the board. And it's like, I think maybe all of us, Allie, I don't know if have you played Betrayal Legacy yet?
Maybe.
With Art and
I don't
Jess,
think
maybe?
so.
No? Okay.
No, we don't have a copy in our house.
Oh, it's so good. It's a game where you put down tiles as you explore a mansion. And GMing is sort of like that, in which, so like as you explore the mansion in Betrayal Legacy, you are like plopping down tiles, and you're like, I don't know, I guess this is the dining room. Okay, when someone goes into the dining room, or when someone moves into a door, you play a tile based on, like, is it the first floor, is it the outside, is it the second floor? And then when they go in, there's a symbol on the tile that says, pull a card from this thing. It could be like an event or an item or whatever. And GMing is not like, I guess, like, the sort of GMing I do specifically is not, or maybe I'll say broadly, it's not just revealing a map that already exists. It's like having that game in front of you where someone goes into a dining room and it says, like, okay, there's going to be an event in this dining room, but then instead of just pulling a random card from the deck, you get to look down to, like, your side of the table where behind a screen you have all of the stuff you've ever prepped, including stuff that you never thought would be in that dining room. But suddenly, if you can if you can justify something showing up in that dining room, someone showing up in that dining room, the letter that they were supposed to find at the bottom of the well, maybe someone from this house found it and then, like, put it in a drawer in this dining room, right? Maybe if the secret, like, dagger is like in a secret compartment that someone, like, stumbles over or whatever, right? Like, those things are tools that you can deploy, and you don't have to lead your players to where you want to deploy them. All you need to do is let them lead you to a place where it's possible that you could bring them into play. Allie, it sounded like you had something else there too.
A little bit, yeah, but it's really just echoing the what you guys are saying, which is like, you're gonna get so much farther by just being able to be like yes and being like, oh, but we have this big conversation. You want to other thing, like, I get how frustrating that is.
Yeah.
It probably sucks. But like for like the hour or two that you're at that table, if someone is going in a direction, like, just go there for a little bit.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow, hour or two. What's that like?
Couldn't be me.
My
other suggestion.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
No, go ahead.
No, you can go ahead.
Is to play something where there's no GM. Play Quiet Year. Play Fall of Magic. Play games play Fiasco. Play games where people are playing characters, even like Fiasco, unlike Quiet Year, but are kind of collaborative, and that will help get them into the mode of being characters who have things to say and things that they want to do. And it will completely destroy the pretense that they have to look to you for everything. And will get them in the practice of coming up with their own scenes. I really think something like The Quiet Year is great for this, because even though you're not playing as a character, it helps you start thinking about big picture stuff and thinking about games as storytelling. And I think that is a great first step. Okay, next question from Colin. They say, how do you balance following the flags your players are? There's like a real through line for a lot of these questions, by the way. They're all different questions, but you can, like, sense. I feel like we've tapped into some deep anxiety across our listenership with this series of questions. How do you balance following the flags your players are setting for you with the desire for their consequences of ignoring other options? If my players are like, yes, the demonic forest sounds interesting, let's go there, about one option, but, quote, the Dwarven Fortress sounds boring, or the Dwarven Fortress sounds fun, but not right now, or even, we should go to the Dwarven Fortress, but Sam isn't here tonight. Do we really want to go deal with the Dwarven shit without Sam? About another, then where do you draw the line between the table is interested in X and the world is living and breathing and things happen off screen? Specifically, I don't know which way to go when there isn't a concrete precedent set in the game's narrative already. For instance, there's a monster heading to Y, and if you don't go there, it will attack, etc. And these decisions are being made at more of a player level. We haven't done a dungeon in a while, we haven't seen this NPC in a hot minute, Sam can't make it this week, etc. Y'all seem to handle this pretty well in Twilight Mirage while juggling two parties, but also none of the decisions around who would and kind of some of the end game feelings your character had about other player characters, but that you hadn't been with in a while, and it's like, well, was that character's feeling, were those because of in-game actions, or were those because of out-of-game scheduling conflicts, right? Basically, how do you all manage what you're interested in at the table, Colin says, with what would make sense in cause and effect of the story? And when do you let something go to find something everyone is more enthusiastic about, versus when do you hold on to an idea because you really want to see it in there? So my answer is it's way blurrier than there being even a very clear best practice that you should follow, or like a formula, especially a formula. There is no... actually, here's the actual way I want to answer this is, two of you were in Worldwide Wrestling RPG, right? Mm-hmm. Allie and Art. Do you remember that one of my principles in that game was to make it up as you go along and make it make sense afterwards, to like make it seem like you always planned it that way? Which is also what wrestling promotions do also all the fucking time. It's a similar principle that's also in action movie world. And I hold that pretty like close to my heart, even in other games, right? I look at something like Twilight Mirage or even Hyron, where the relationships between characters, when the outcomes of certain events, sometimes those things have out of character reasons. In fact, for me, there is no clean... there's a concept in game studies called the magic circle that gets talked about a lot, even though the person who first used it didn't actually talk about it all that much. And it kind of says, hey, game spaces are special and they're removed from the real world. But in my mind, I actually think that circle is really porous. And so an example of that is like, think about all the types of content that are not in Friends at the Table stories. Think about all of the sorts of like ultra violence or certain types of content that would require really strong trigger or content warnings that just don't exist, right? Like we just don't go there, and so that delimits the space of possibility in a way that is not entirely dissimilar from Sam isn't here, so let's not do the dwarven shit. Stuff outside of the game is always influencing stuff inside of the game, and that's not abnormal. That's the way all narrative works, and especially the sort of collaborative narrative that we all play in. And so one is like, when you don't go to the fortress, the dwarven fortress, because Sam isn't there, one, as the GM, it's your job to kind of decide how much that matters in terms of clocks ticking and all of that. But more importantly, two, is to justify that when and if the camera demands you justify it. It is not to be just like shrug, well, the dwarves didn't do a thing today because Sam wasn't here. It's not that hard for you if a player says, or it's not that it's not that hard. It's like, it is part of the job of GMing to be like, if a player says, well, what were the dwarves up to and we didn't go because Sam wasn't here, you should be able to give some sort of an answer there. Maybe they're biding their time. Maybe they've been relying on, some spies to gather information. Maybe, you float out in the adventure you do go on. Again, maybe the players find a letter and you float out an idea that's like, oh, wow, this group, that the other place that you've gone to, the demonic fortress, has been trading with the dwarven fortress or whatever. Like, those things can interlock in ways where you can show that interconnectivity without literally ticking a clock and making them feel bad for not going the other direction. My only absolute answer here is you should never, ever, ever tick a clock without having shown the barrel first. The thing of like, there is a monster heading to Y, and if you don't go there, it will attack. They should never come home to find the place dead, and then you be like, yeah, well, I've been ticking this clock in the background that you've never seen and that you have no idea about and that I've never done any foreshadowing on, and it's literally come out of nowhere. You should always be like, hey, there is some shit coming, right? Like, the Yogg will be here in 5 weeks. And so you should have that sense building. You should not be pulling triggers on guns you've never shown them.
Can I gently disagree with you?
Yes.
I think if Sam wants to do the dwarf thing, just put it all on pause and wait for Sam to be there.
No, yeah. I'm also saying that.
You don't know where Sam's doing.
I'm also saying you can I'm also saying don't do it without Sam. I'm just saying you don't have to. There isn't a binary where it's like, oh yeah, the dwarves just froze for that month. It's so easy to build a world by coming up with some vignette about what the dwarves did while you were away that can communicate something about who they are and what they've done. And I think that's what elevates like good games that I've been in, is the sense that the world continues, and it doesn't necessarily there's a way to frame it, and you can both say here's what the dwarves have been up to, and also just say out loud, don't worry, like I'm not punishing you for not going to see the dwarves, but remember they're off there doing this thing. Do you know what I mean? I'm trying to think of an example in Hiron where we've done that. I think we've been doing it this season, right? That like the 3 places you could go to on the map have all had stuff going on with them, but I also know that like, there are actually 4 places I would say now. There are things that I could have been like, hey, failure to engage with this right now will have a huge repercussion, and then could have like seriously followed through in even bigger ways. But I know that you can only go to one place at a time, and you know that you can only go to one place at a time. So like the stuff that's happening to the immediate east of you just hasn't bubbled up yet. But I've done my best to like mention them as many times as I can, so that they don't feel like, so that when we do get there and stuff is happening, it's happening because we've been talking about it, instead of it being like a situation where it feels like no one there has been alive this whole time, The other half of this is you don't have to run games like this. If your players want to like break down doors and fight zombies and don't want a living world in that way, and that's not a priority, that is 100% an okay way to play tabletop role-playing games, The world can be static, and like that's what you get in a lot of video games, is like the world is waiting for you to explore it, and that can be a really fun way to play a game. So it's one of those things where the best thing you can do is talk to your players about it, I think. Any other thoughts here? Okay. Parker says, I am GMing a Powered by the Apocalypse game, and I struggle with how to frame the hard moves I make on failed rolls. Sometimes the hard move is an obvious part of the current scene, but sometimes it's something somewhere else or a broader consequence that isn't immediately evident. What is the best way to show the barrel of a gun? This game, Monster of the Week, doesn't have clocks I can just tick as a warning, and I struggle with how to show these kind of moves in ways that are narratively interesting. It is hard to do that. I do think that like I think about counterweight a lot, and how like rad it was that I just had a page to put you on and be like, click, tick, this is scary. This is a thing that's like I'm doing a thing back here. But even then, I do think that the ways that worked best was when I did that and then also illustrated it for y'all. That sounds right to me?
Mm-hmm.
Like it was never just like Ebex is doing a thing. Or rarely, I guess.
The fact that I also remember it happening rarely. The fact that it happened rarely made it like tense without you can do it. If you overdid it, it would suck.
Yeah.
Kind of like anything, but just ominously ticking a clock every stretch of time.
Right. Yeah, totally. What I'll say is I think the thing here too is just like, you don't have to, not every, who was it recently who said you can make a move as soft as you want?
Jack.
Was it Jack? Okay. In a Hiron game, which is true. And so if you feel like there isn't a hard move you can make that's obvious or that makes sense, you don't have to make a hard move. You can make you can communicate that things are happening, that there's like stuff at play, and that there's like the possibility of there being bad stuff to come. Or one way to think about this that helped me so much was playing Blades and thinking about positioning and effect, even in games that don't do that, where you think about something like Dungeon World or Monster of the Week does this too, where like Monster of the Week actually does this really well when it comes to monster fights, where you're fighting a monster. If you fail the roll, it can be like you lose access to a place where you have the ability to fight that monster, right? For the people on this call who maybe haven't played this or don't know it, Monster of the Week is like a Buffy style game. It's like a Monster of the Week game. And the idea, one of the things that comes up a lot is like, okay, we can hurt this monster, but only if we cover it in ash first, or only if we build a point of power that we all stand on, or only if it's covered in water, or that like we're whatever, that type of stuff, the stuff that Buffy does. And so taking that access away is a good way to be like a sort of a soft move, because it makes them work to get it back, but it isn't necessarily the thing where it's like, now I'm doing damage to you, or now there's a second monster to fight,
Something else that might help is like clocks are it's like some games officially have clocks, and they're like a mechanical representation of what is just happening in a story, so you can just keep track of a set of things, just like you don't have to call them clocks. You could call them clocks if you want, but like if you had a set, a list of things that you've communicated that you had, like oh, here are the things that are important. You can just pick one of those things, whatever is the most relevant, and say something about it. Like it doesn't have to be built into the game, right?
No, totally. Like you could just you can add clocks to whatever you want.
Yeah.
Just listen to this show as I've done it in games that just don't have them. They don't always mesh super nicely, but that is a thing that you can do, and you can do it narratively too, right? I think about something where you could imagine a situation where like you're fighting in a sewer system or something. You're fighting in a let's say a sewer system where it's like the rocks above you, or the ceiling above you is beginning to like crumble, and you can draw a clock on the board, and you can say, or you can draw a clock on a piece of paper at the table and say, each time I tick this, we're going to get closer to the ceiling breaking, and a pipe above us, flooding this entire area or something, right? That is a clock. Even if all you say is, all right, it's crumbling a little bit more, you think maybe if this happens one more time.
Yeah, they don't have to ever know that it was a clock in your head,
right?
Like You're trying to break into a bad guy's hideout, and you don't do it the right way, and the thing that they're planning, and they know that they're planning something. Like,
yes.
Just tell them that they're getting closer.
That was the stuff in the beginning of Winter with Mother Glory, right? It was like you were trying to get into a vault, and the way that I put a clock on the table without actually putting a clock on the table was just every time that someone failed a roll, Mother Glory got closer, and like put people deeper and deeper into threat until she would be an added obstacle that you would have to deal with at that point, and so that was that's a good way of thinking about this. And I think maybe that's the actual answer here for me is, if you're struggling to find consequences and threats, then it might be worth doing another pass during your prep of the locations and creatures and NPCs, and thinking about ways to add a little more depth so that you can lean on that during play. Being able to, I was beating myself up recently for actually not doing this very well in a fight that happened in a library in a recent episode, where in my prep I'd done the work of listing stuff in a library, and then none of it came up because that was already a very dense fight with a lot of other shit happening. But there's a world in which you can imagine that fight going such a way that huge towers of books are falling over, or characters are darting between the different what are they called, stacks, bookshelves and stuff, or where hey, paper is very flammable. It'd be easy to imagine a world in which something caught fire. I'm sure y'all would have loved to just add another layer of bullshit to that fight. But those are the ways where if you feel like you need to make a hard move, having a detailed environment to talk about, or having characters who have stakes that you can quickly put into play, is really useful. Any other thoughts on consequences?
Yeah, I feel like this question kind of ties into the answer I would have had for the last question too, because
sure.
I think that there's ways to show that things are happening far away that don't have to be really immediate or really big.
Right.
And if this person kind of knows what they want the consequences to be, but not how to show it narratively, like you can just change where the camera is, right?
Right.
And it's a way to make games seem like really big and really dynamic and being like, okay, you pull the trigger, you got a one, the thing that you wanted to do happens, and then you could just say, but like
Right.
on the other side of town, there's a screen that turns on and your face is on it. And the player
Yes.
can be like, that sucks. I don't want that to happen, but it did. And that's like really cool and really interesting and like, oh fuck, I fucked up,
Yes,
right?
that's a good
Without
answer.
having it to be like immediate or like something the character knows right away or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Or you can, or like someone comes into town and says like, oh,
I'm looking
on
for
the
the
other
guy
side
in
of
the
town,
white
something
hat.
bad happened or whatever, right?
Right. Look, this is the cutaway in Mass Effect, right? To you finish a planet and then it cuts away to Saren and Benezia talking, and you're like, "Yo, what the fuck is going on? What did I do? Shit." But no, that's exactly right. Right, that is stuff that we did a lot in Counterweight, and also in Marialda, because both of those were games about like laying low and not getting into trouble and not gaining heat. And so yeah, well, that was such a great thing to be able to rely on, where it's like you've left evidence behind, you've tapped into something that you didn't mean to tap into. In a Monster of the Week game where you're like playing with monsters and demons and shit. Listen, you don't know what sort of magical shit they fucking activated by mistake.
Right, yeah. Like an episode of Sailor Moon like shows you Queen Beryl's office sometimes,
Yes.
right? Like, and the characters aren't there and you don't see it happening, but that doesn't mean that like you as a GM shouldn't show that on camera, so to
Yes.
speak. So
Yeah.
like people at the table know that the stakes are getting they're starting to boil, right? Like
Yeah, totally. That's the thing that we haven't done. I don't do at all in Hyron for like weird. Like I have. There are a lot of time I want the camera to be on the player characters in Hyron a lot, but that's not a thing I think is true about tabletop role playing games. Those sorts of like cutaways and cutscenes and like that style of GMing is something that I still appeals to me, and it's something that I did a lot of in college, as Art can speak to, I'm sure. And it's not something that I think is like innately wrong in any way, and so like lean into that, especially if you have like a good antagonist. There's another version of Hyron where we have cutaways to like Arel grinning, or to, you know what I mean? Like that's a thing that we could do. I'm specifically not doing it for weird reasons, but that is a tool in your toolbox, and you should feel like totally empowered to use it. Art, do you have any consequence thoughts that we haven't hit?
I don't think so. I think this has been a good consequence talk.
Good consequence talk.
Yeah, good.
Talking about consequences. Next up is
talking about consequences.
Tegan, who says, I've been playing tabletop RPGs for many years, and I've been a GM for a small crew for over a year. My partner has been endlessly supportive, but hasn't expressed interest in joining in. I know she'd play with us if I asked, but if I'm going to do that, I want it to be sure it's something that she'll enjoy. Do you have any suggestions for games to play with new players or people who are uncomfortable with RPGs? Any thoughts here at the table? Any opening feelings?
Yeah, to like directly answer this question, like in the like clearest way, is like a pre-done thing. Like something where like everything is out of the book, like a full on pre-written adventure. I think removes a lot of the uncertainty of working with a new player.
That's interesting, because that way you just have everything in front of you.
Right, and everything's like been gone over by a lot of people, and that all the challenges are appropriate, and
they're not gonna they're not gonna hit a fight where you're not gonna hit like the first adventure that we did in Scum and Villainy, where it's like, this is not, no one is winning, everyone is getting like, this is going bad, and this is not a good way to introduce someone to a new system.
Right, yeah, I think that there's like an element there of that. I think it just makes it like it's like playing in a playground instead of
right.
I don't know, playing in instead of like playing at the docks with the rusty bottle.
Don't do that. Well, I guess you can have a lot of fun. I guess in this analogy, are we the docks?
Yeah, we're in the docks. We're mixing it up with the
wrong side of the tracks.
Dock dwelling.
It's rare to find
Monsters.
a bottle that rusts.
It's a metal bottle.
It's a metal bottle. No, metal bottles exist. I'm just saying they are rare. So if you find one, let loose.
You would think that they would be making them out of some sort of non-rusting material
I would
because
think that.
bottles hold liquids most of the time.
Sometimes they hold ships.
Well,
But
I mean, it is part of the new health fad, rust water.
oh yeah, that's
It's
We're
a
not
coffee
as far from that as you
replacement.
think.
Is that
No,
not a
I-
thing? Is that not a thing already? I feel like it has to be.
The closest thing I can think of is the Instagram ad for Mud Water.
Oh my god.
They're not mad at coffee; they're just disappointed in it.
The truth. So they had to put a bunch of weird stuff in some water.
Yeah, they put like dirt and roots in water, and it's the same color as coffee. So,
Any other thoughts here for Tegan? Any other suggestions?
this is slightly different because my first, when I was playing with people, who it was their first RPG, they had like explicitly been like, "Can we do a tabletop game?" And I was like, "Yes, but first we should play something different." And we did a couple different things. We did do a prefab D&D campaign. It was fine. It was fine. We also did like we just did like an improvised like dice rolling thing, like a zombie thing.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't really have any rules. I just was like, here is the idea of deciding what you want to do as a fake person.
Right.
And that actually worked out pretty well. That was, I think, the more fun thing. This was before like I knew that there were other games that you could play. Like it didn't occur to me that Dungeons and Dragons wasn't the only tabletop RPG. I didn't know.
Right.
So I was like, well, I don't want to do that. So I just like did whatever. I had another point, but yeah, that worked. So like if you find something, there's a billion things that are well thought out that are, just small decision games that you can find that can teach people or like, give people practice at playing a character.
Yeah.
Or even playing themselves in a scenario.
So I guess I'll give the straight answer first, which is like, there are a lot of actually great 2-player RPGs out there that are like a cool way to just have that sort of tight focus. And actually, honestly, there's a lot of role-playing games you can do with 2 players. I think about something like you could do a really great 2-player game of Masks, actually. Or when I say 2-player, I mean a GM and a player, because you think about like superheroes. It turns out superheroes are like often not team-based stories. They're singular characters. They're
Say
solo
team
characters.
or team, because it is both.
Team. It is both, but I'm saying it does not have to be a team. A team-based.
Because Masks does have to be team-based.
It does need to. Well, yeah, yes, it does. But if you look around for like 2-player games, you'll find a pretty big list. And I think that there's a degree to which finding something built for 2 players is a useful way to start, because for the reason that Art was talking about, which is like you don't need to balance. You don't need to like assume that the game won't assume that you're going to be a party of 4 who has like healing and blah blah blah. That's the straight answer. My real answer, like the thing in my gut, is like, if you're going to do this, which for me is a kind of a big if your partner has not shown a lot of excitement for it or hasn't shown any personal direct interest, it should be something that is based in what you know about her and what she likes. Does she really love science fiction stories? Then like try to find something that fits that. Does she really like, the idea of ghost stories or horror or something? Like maybe find something in that space that you can start playing with, something like 10 Candles, something like Dread. There are ways to find games that fit, that will tie into an interest that she already has, and that is not something where you feel like you are you need to bring her along twice, first to the game and then to the genre. So I think that's one. Another way to do that is just like, what is a world she already likes? What is a world that that you together are already invested in? Is there a TV show? Is there a video game? Like, being able to like play in a Dragon Age game, or being able to play in a Mass Effect game, like, or a Star Wars game, you know what I mean? Like, I think about something like Star Wars is actually maybe like a great idea would have been a great idea for me. Like, the thing that would have, actually, you know what got me into tabletop role-playing games? The first tabletop role-playing game book I owned was the Dragon Ball Z tabletop role-playing game.
Damn, we gotta do a live of that.
I don't have it anymore, and it's not good.
Well, that's why it's alive and not a whole season.
Well,
I think my first one was the Sailor Moon one. I
really?
never played it, but I owned it. Yeah.
Right. Right. No, me either. I also never played it. But I read it front to back. I like just completely devoured everything in that book, and that's what opened me up to the idea of playing that style of tabletop role-playing game. And then I did the same thing with the Star Wars, with like the D20 Star Wars stuff that was coming out at the time, and like that's a really good way of like starting that process. Allie, yeah. So wait, so you owned the Sailor Moon one. Was there anything else that got you into like RP, or like? Do you have any other thoughts on this question?
Because I came in through like the AOL chat stuff, so that was just like a whole different avenue. But yeah, my response to this question is like, because that's a good idea. I think that's starting in a universe that like already exists and being like, let's just play this game here, so it's already familiar to you. Is like probably the thing to do because it's great. I love to do it. My suggestion, barring like a pre-built, like I know Blades has like pre-made characters and things like that, and like a system where you can just do that and be like, hey, here's your sheet. You don't have to worry about building a character right now. You just have to worry about like imagining what this person is like.
Right.
And also like I don't know if the person asking this question plays a lot of like board games or card games. But I feel like the ones of those where it's like each person is playing a character that has its own skills and everybody's working towards this thing, but like you have your own card that has a picture of somebody and the things that you do, might be a good way to start. Just like getting your partner into like feeling comfortable with the small crew that you play with. And also just like being like, okay, you rolled a 6 and you used your character action that like lets you do a thing. Like, what do you think that looks like? Is a really good way to like ease into like just getting into a character, and then also like having fun playing the structure of a game if she needs to start from like floor 1, right? Because that's just a way to have like a good time. Totally. I don't know if when she has that good time, she's like, yeah, okay, now I'll do the like role playing 102 now.
Yeah, totally. I think that's yeah. I just want to take a brief note because I want to note that the Dragon Ball Z, it's Dragon Ball Z: The Anime Adventure Game. Is the name of it. It was published by R. Telsorian, who you might know also published Cyberpunk 2020 and Cyberpunk, the original, and Cyberpunk version 3, which was written by Mike Pondsmith, who is rad. Mike Pondsmith also wrote the Dragon Ball Z anime adventure game. So the person who did, the person who built the world and game of Cyberpunk that like the original Netrunner card game was based in, and that the new upcoming Cyberpunk 2077 is based in, that world, the author of that also made the Dragon Ball Z adventure game, the Dragon Ball Z tabletop RPG. He also made a game called Mechton Zeta, which, if you can guess, is just a Gundam or Macross game, basically, but with the serial numbers filed off. None of these games, like, I don't think any of these games hold up to contemporary, like, not standards, but like conventions. But boy, is it funny that Mike Pondsmith did all this stuff. Mike Pondsmith is rad. Mike Pondsmith is like, at this point, a kind of middle-aged black dude who's like, there's some great videos of him wearing a leather jacket and sunglasses and explaining what cyberpunk is while he walks around Los Angeles. I think he might be a libertarian. He might be, but it's like, it's one of those things that's like, he's a libertarian the way a lot of 80s punks had a libertarian streak, you know,
he
left
hasn't
libertarian.
Yet said that his games aren't political.
He has not said that. In fact, he has said the opposite of that. He has actually said very clearly that Cyberpunk 2020 is like absolutely a critique of like that era of big kind of like the allegiance between big government and big mega corporations, right? So yeah, he has not Chris Avaloned us. I'm so fucking mad, Keith.
Oh my god. Did you see my fucking... I tweeted some interview that I read from 4 years ago that where he basically said, like, literally the opposite thing.
Yeah, I know.
I have two things.
Yes.
One, I think I mentioned this to someone, but my mom owns the Rocky and Bullwinkle role-playing game that comes with puppets.
Wow.
And we need to make that like a live show one day. I think it needs to be a live show because of the puppet aspect.
Mm-hmm.
We just need to figure that out someday.
We have to figure it out.
Two.
Now, can I use my own Rocky and Bullwinkle puppets that I have?
I mean, we'll have to see. They have to be in scale with the other puppets.
Oh, I should note on that note really quick, the Dragon Ball Z book also has rules for playing with action figures. So similar situation.
Ooh.
Great. Love it. And I don't want to like get too like analytical here on this question, but you also have to like be aware that a soft no already.
Right. Can you say that again? Because you broke up a little bit, but I kind of
get... so I mean, you have to be like aware that the being supportive and not expressing interest in joining in might be a secret no.
Right.
And that you should be like prepared to like do some work and make this happen, and have the answer be like, I'm not super
into this,
into it.
Yeah, and that's okay. Like that is one of the biggest, most important things I learned as I was growing up and becoming an adult was my partners and my interests do not need to overlap 100%. It's nice when there's good overlap and you can find activities to do that everyone is happy with, but like you don't need to be mirrors of each other. And in fact, like every good relationship I've been in has been about being with people who open up my expectations and like bring me to into things that I've never thought of before or that I thought I would like, or often like are with people who have other interests that have nothing to do with me and that are like they're off doing that this weekend, and that is cool. I'm like, hell yeah for them. The relationship does not need to be the be all and end all of your lives together. And it's actually, in my experience, it's been very healthy to have partners who have other stuff going on. And for me to be able to have stuff that I have with like, oh, this is with this group of friends. Like it doesn't have to be all consuming in that way. And so I'm just saying that to preempt if that is a soft no, as Art suggested it could be, that does not mean you don't have to read that as being a problem necessarily. This is not a relationship advice show, though I bet we could do an one of those. But, I think I stand by what I just said.
Look, if the guy that yells at bar owners can do it, we can do it.
Mm-hmm. Did that start yet? Are we missing that now?
Today,
it's
right?
Premiere tonight.
Okay.
It's at 10 Eastern.
So we're going to make it. Okay. Great. Can't wait. I'm going to advance the question if we're ready.
Stay tuned for our Marriage Rescue live stream after.
Yeah, we'll just stay on
right here.
Commentary track.
Yeah. It's not on in this time zone. You and I can't watch it.
I'll figure it out. Let me we'll find an illegal stream.
We'll stream it.
We are not going to do that. And you shouldn't do it either. You can support this stream by going to friendsathetable.cash. Riley.
I'm watching Marriage Rescue.
Riley writes in and says, so, I'm very passionate about tabletop role-playing games. And when I'm passionate about things, I tend to want to talk about them with other people. And the way I talk about them ends up being kind of overwhelming and disorganized. This particular hyperfixation is weirder for me than most because, one, it's more obscure than usual. And two, even people who play stuff like D&D often don't know anything outside of popular games. I work at a summer camp where a bunch of the counselors and campers play stuff like D&D, and since I'm going to be the tabletop role-playing game specialist this coming summer, I'm going to be talking about games a lot, and I want to be able to do that without coming off as an asshole who scoffs at nerds who play D&D or whatever, while still recommending other cool games that I play. It's just hard to find a good place to start with the wide breadth of games out there and my horrible ADHD brain. As Riley's quote about her own brain, that is not me making that claim. Basically, my question is, do you have any tips for talking about tabletop role-playing games with people who don't know much about them, like you are a normal human person? This is a hard question because it's a hard question, but it's a good question because I think it's actually pretty applicable to a lot of interests, especially once you get into a really specialized place. It can be really hard to talk about, even to talk about something like video games with a wide audience, even though video games are such a bigger thing culturally than tabletop role-playing games are, or even maybe not, you don't have to even go to bigger things, but like D&D is kind of the tabletop role-playing game in a way that is not true for video games, right? Even though video games certainly have a kind of a deeply homogeneous and kind of hegemonic like set of standards, and like this is what a AAA video game looks like. It looks like Call of Duty or Madden or Skyrim. Like pick one of the three. That's it. There is still inside of that more breadth than just the one. So I do get that. But like I think even if you're talking about sports, if you're talking about music, it's so easy to be that person who is like, I want to talk to you about this. Like, you should look at Keith and me sending music suggestions back and forth from the other day.
You
were this person, Keith. You were this person, Keith. There's video footage of you.
I know.
Being this person with music, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I don't know about. Yeah, probably. and here's the funniest thing about that is that like I probably like if I was as bad now as I was then, I would probably have that same attitude about the music I used to listen to.
Right.
Like, I would be just as displeased with former me as former me was with some fucking regular person listening to whatever goddamn thing they want.
But my point is, people listen to whatever they want.
Well, but that's so. Sorry, Austin, you had a point. You can finish your point, but I have very strong opinions on this.
Okay, well, let me just finish I will actually make this point very quickly, which is, if it's your job to do this thing, the best thing I can say for you to do is to lean into that enthusiasm, but to lean particularly into your positive feelings about the stuff you like and figuring out ways to identify the elements of the stuff that you like that is very clear, and that does not require expertise to talk about. And I know that sounds hard because it is hard. It is a difficult thing that comes with practice. I say that as someone who writes a lot about complex games, and who has to talk about them a lot, and who has absolutely done the thing you were worried about to people on this call where I'm like, this is our fucking Discord every year before we get to the next season. This is me being like, y'all have to look at this PDF. This next game we're doing is great. Let me link 30 different things from all the different playbooks and look at this weird rule for downtime. Look at this like cool ability this one class has, like complete hyperfixation in that exact same way. And like
I want you to know that I've only clicked on like 30% of the links you've ever sent me in that state.
I know.
And I'm not sorry.
It's not for you, it's for me. You know, like I'm sending it because
you just get excited.
I get excited, and it's about the process of beginning to conceptualize stuff, and like saying it, putting it into the world helps me find the shape in the marble. You know what I mean? Every link I send you is like taking the chisel to the idea of what the next season is. And when I'm doing it right, it is when I've identified something that is easily communicable, that is only 30 words instead of 300, and that is not necessarily about it isn't 100% about my excitement. It's about me being excited to play something with you. And so that is my like one tip here is just like really focus on your positivity and not their limited knowledge and their limited like D&D loving shit. And maybe also like figure out why they like D&D and draw lines from it. Like, do they like doing big damage numbers? Do they like finding a cool build? Do they like a high adventure? Like, what is it about D&D that your players or that the campers, is that what we call people at a camp?
Yeah.
Campers, yeah.
Would they like about D&D, and find a way to draw a line to the things you do like, if that makes sense. Keith, you have big feelings.
Yeah, this is I think a lot of people go through a period where they go like, "Oh, I was an asshole about this thing for no reason," right? And it's like, there's a shift away from feeling very passionately that some person is doing something wrong into like, well, that person just likes something that I don't like, and that's all that it is, really.
Right.
And when two people when people are agreeing to talk about something, then that's a great time to like say what you do and don't like about something, and like critique a thing and compliment another thing, or share like swap like but like if someone just likes Dungeons and Dragons, or if someone likes music that I don't like, I can't just go like, ugh, bleh. Like, because it's like the same thing as yesterday. Yesterday I told Allie I wouldn't eat a Domino's pizza if someone gave it to me, which is hyperbolic. Because I wouldn't be rude about it, but I definitely would be like, ugh, why are we getting Domino's pizza ever? But if this was like a stranger, or if this was someone that I didn't feel like I could say, I would never eat a Domino's pizza because it's trash, too, then I wouldn't. And like finding the line between snob and like whatever's one less than, like, snob is the middle point, right? Like I try to be on the
You want to be
right.
a trendsetter. You want to be a, what do you want to be? What is the right side of snob?
I just like the stuff that I like, and that's fine.
But but like this is, I think Riley's position is like, literally her job this summer is going to be opening up the, like, actually it's not. Her job this summer is tabletop role-playing game specialist. And there's a way to do that where it's just D&D, or she can do it where her goal is to figure out ways to get people to eat things that aren't Domino's. Or
that's
to, like,
what I mean, yeah.
help them figure out other foods that they like. And in this case, foods are the quiet year.
And I think that the food analogy works. It's very easy if someone's only ever had Domino's to be like, like, oh, you like cheese and sauce on a bread? Here, try this pizza. Pizzas, all kinds of pizzas can be good,
right?
Maybe. Different kinds of pizzas can be good, too, for other reasons, or even the same reasons. But it's like, yeah, I totally understand the feeling of, like, no one in my life wants to hear me talk about between 1 and 10 different things that I'm interested in.
The other thing that I've run into with this is you don't want to overhype it. And like, I think part of this is you have to feel that sting a couple of times when you were in love with a thing and you like give it the hard sell, and then people don't like it and it fucking sucks because you're like, but I love this thing. And they're like, yeah.
You got to match energy.
And I think it's a lesson hard learned. You're right. You do have to match energy.
Like, if someone is super fucking jazzed about Dungeons and Dragons, then you can, like, match that energy and be really jazzed about a different game. Like, oh, if you're really excited about that, then you can be really excited about something else, maybe. Yeah. But if you're like, yeah, I like this thing, like, you can't go from, like, 15 miles an hour to 60 miles an hour on role-playing games. Like, oh, if you think Dungeons and Dragons is only okay, then I'm gonna fucking blow your mind.
Allie, it sounded like you had something here too. Oh, either of you.
Go, Allie.
Yeah, I think that there is a little bit of the like ping-ponginess that you guys were just trying to get into, which is like, especially since it's like your coworkers. I was trying to think of like when I talk to my coworkers about video games a lot, like when I sold them or whatever, where it's like, oh, what did you do in D&D last night? Oh, you have an elf that you really like? Like, oh, the Dungeon World elf class is really cool. And like, you can kind of like tick for tat there, where like you have an actual conversation about it because you're also interested in the games that they're playing. It's it might be a hard onboarding process.
Yeah, I mean it's a job, so they have to do work.
Right.
That's the work. The work is doing that part.
Doing this. Well, like the other thing here is, well, so one is like, if you're actually asking me how do I sell someone on the idea of a game, I do have strategies for that. And it's like, it's what I use whenever I review a game I like a lot, right? Which is like, try to capture the experience of what you love instead of giving a bullet point list of the game features. So like, instead of saying that the reason that like Dungeon World is good is because it has X classes and because you roll 2d6 and the 2d6 has a good curve on it and that like there's good cool abilities. Tell a story, right? I recently told this story. I've told here a bunch about I was on the Beastcast like last month and I told a story about why I personally have had good experience with encumbrance in games, even though that whole podcast hates encumbrance mechanics. And I told a story about a Torchbearer game in which I had to make a hard decision while robbing some orcs. Did I want to keep my rations or this really expensive carpet I found? And when I told that story, I wasn't talking about like, well, you have to understand in Torchbearer, there are, you have X number of inventory slots. And then on top of that, you have to think about weight. And then also blah, blah, blah. Like I elided all of the actual mechanics to get to the story part. And I think that if you were trying to sell someone on something like the Sprawl, I wouldn't say there's this mechanic where all these clocks are ticking. What I would try to emphasize is the feeling of clocks ticking. What I would try to emphasize is the feeling of vulnerability. The ways, if I was thinking about something like Blades in the Dark, I would try to sell the ways in which players can work together in order to increase their chances of winning, and the ways in which like heists go wrong and things snowball in fun ways. And I would do that by telling a story. I would do that by trying to be evocative and paint a picture and talk about what people respond well to stories more so than mechanics if they aren't experts, right? If they can't see why something like the getting a crit and clearing stress is exciting on dice rolls in Blades in the Dark, you can still tell that story by explaining that someone like did this incredible feat of dynamism and strength so well that they were like teetering on the brink of like personal mental collapse, but they saved their friend, and saving their friend gave them the confidence they needed to like finish the heist, right? And when you tell that story that way, people are going to be like, wait, you did that in a game? And they're not, instead of being like, yawn, you just said roll 2d6. I don't know what a d6 is. Did you mean 26? Did you roll 26? So I think like that is my actual, if you're going to give someone the hard sell on a thing, bring them in, which actually means thinking a lot about your own experience with games that you love and trying to narrativize it, even if the actual experience was not necessarily as clean as that.
That's it. The last bit there, I think, is really important. Where it's like and I think it's part of like matching energy. Where it's like you have to play to your audience. And the good news is that if you're at a camp, people are probably signing up to do the thing that you're in charge of. It's not like they're just sending every kid to go play tabletop games. Probably, I'm guessing. But
yeah,
like,
from talking to Riley, I think that like it's a situation where there will be a lot of role playing games being played. Like that is what she's in charge of, and so there will be like a situation where it isn't just like she's there as a camp counselor and also like will sometimes run a D&D game. You know, it's like the equivalent of being like the swimming instructor or the crafts instructor, you know.
But so swimming instructor is good, right? Like you can't talk Olympic swimming strategies to someone who is there to learn how to swim.
Yes.
You like
okay,
you
but
like,
think about how fun. Well, actually, two things. One, it's super funny to think about. Two, Art and I took bowling from a professional bowler once, and that is literally exactly what he did.
Oh wow, that's so funny.
He 100% was like the first thing he did was you know what a bowling lane looks like? You know, there's like there's the bowling lane. I'm not talking about candlepin bowling either.
Lanes look very similar.
Okay. So you know there's like the ball distribution area?
Yeah.
Like the machine? Okay, so imagine he was behind that, like closer to like the little like area that goes back up a level, and like where the shoes and shit are. So he's like at the very
he was,
end.
Like, behind the ball return. He was all the way back.
He was all the way back on his knees. And then he threw a strike. And that was the way he introduced himself to us.
Wow.
He was in the Bowling Hall of Fame. He was a big deal.
We got Quiznos a lot that year. That was cool. Remember that?
I don't think Quiznos even exists anymore.
Is it gone?
No. You can, if you go to the right mall, you can find a Quiznos.
There's one left in one mall.
2 things here.
Yeah.
1, you should play some D&D with campers.
Yeah, definitely.
And don't be too cool for it, and just like have as good a time as you can. And like D&D is fine, honestly. You can have anyone can have a good time playing D&D.
You can eat Domino's. Yeah. It's not, you're going to eat it.
Yeah.
It's going to be fine. If you don't want the pizza, just get the breadsticks. They're better.
And then to like drill down to like do you have any tips for talking about tabletop role-playing games with people who don't know much about them, like you're a normal human person? I absolutely do not have any tips for that. No. And let me tell you what makes that harder is having it be your job. People ask what I do, and it's like the most stressful 45 seconds of my day. Because it's like, well, I do like business development. I'm a cast member on a podcast. And like the best case scenarios, they just say okay and start talking about something else.
Oh wow!
But like when people want to like know like, oh, what's your podcast? Oh, like it's an actual play podcast. We play.
You've already fucked up. You don't say the name of the genre.
Yeah.
I feel like where I go, people ask me and they won't stop asking questions, and these conversations last like an hour.
Yes, this happened to me recently. Remember I gave that talk at Pomona. So the day after that, I had to do something that in retrospect is so scary, and I'm so glad I was just tired and could just go do it and just like not have to stress about it, which is I had like a 3-hour luncheon that was just like academics from 12 different academic fields, including one who was like a little too upset that alt-right people had been driven off of Patreon, by the way. And they like were just like
people that went to school suck.
So they were like grilling me for 3 hours, and one of those hours was just, what is your podcast, over and over again. So Art, it is the nightmare is real. I'm with you.
No, it's so bad. I have to explain what my job is to like 15 plus family members all of the time. And they're all just like, oh, what's that radio show that you're on? And I'm like, yeah, it's just yep, that's what it is, and it's great.
You just
it's AM, so you can't listen to it.
So bad.
The pitch is that we are telling it's, hey, have you heard of Game of Thrones?
Right.
Or have you heard of Blade Runner? Or have you heard of Voltron? Or whatever the fuck the person you're talking to has definitely heard of. And then
I fucking live in LA. I can't be like, have you heard of Game of Thrones? Because then people are going to be like, oh, you work for Game of Thrones?
All right, so you've heard of what's the thing that people like don't like, but like they know it's a thing and they're not going to get excited that you work on it? Friends at the table.
Can you see Lord of the Rings and then they're like that? Those movies don't come out and you can be like, no. It's like that.
Amazon
but it's
one.
like
They're doing an Amazon
it's
one.
Like Final Fantasy.
Yeah.
It's like Final Fantasy, except
what's Final Fantasy?
They know what the fuck Final Fantasy is.
Nah, I don't know.
They know who Sephiroth is.
No,
I barely know who
all of my
Sephiroth
wife's cousins know who Sephiroth is.
Fuck. They know who Frodo is.
They know who Frodo is.
Austin, I keep asking people because like Stranger Things is a thing now, and like
right, people know what D&D is.
Yeah. No, they don't.
What, Stranger Things? Okay, wait. One.
No.
Yes, they do, because D&D 5th edition has sold more than every previous edition of D&D put together. That is how big D&D is.
Is like a big culture.
So you're right. Your family does not know what D&D is. I'm not saying that that's the case. And for what it's worth, parts of my family I cannot use the words D&D with, because they will think I'm going to hell because they are those sorts of Christians still, 100%. But the point is, the way you tell this story, the way you pitch what this is like, I think you focus in on storytelling. You focus in on, like, it's a bunch of us. It's like a You're in LA, Art. It's like we're basically recording a writer's room, but that has rules, that has some dice in it. You know? Have you heard of Craps? It's like that, but a writer's room.
Yeah.
Craps? Did you say the dice game?
Like the dice game. Yeah. Like us. That's what we do. You roll some dice.
It's like story narrative craps.
Narrative craps.
Story craps is about what we do, yeah.
Can you win a lot of money with like that?
We do all right, Keith. Let me tell you. We do okay. I'd like to do better, but we do good. I'm happy with the support we have. Thank you to everyone who's supporting us. Friendofthetable.cash.
Yeah, Gary.
I had someone that was recently that was really confused about what I do, and I spent a half an hour like explaining it, and then they said, "Oh, like the Adventure Zone."
Right, that's what you should say.
And I was just like, "Yeah, it's that.
It's just that."
And then I was like,
Adventure Zone's the best-selling book.
They were so confused about what my thing was that I was confused. I was like, "Do you like play role-playing games, or like how do you know? Do you listen to the other like podcasts that they do?" And he was just like, "No, I just found it one day and I listened to all of it." It was so bizarre because he still didn't seem to understand what I did.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
Allie.
No, I'm just gonna say really quickly. My cousin the other day, like I was trying to have this conversation with her, and then she asked me how many hours a week I worked.
Yeah.
Just like, my mind split because I was like, "You're supposed to be cool. Why did you ask me that of all things?"
Yeah. Can I say the worst thing I've ever heard a person say in a meeting?
Sure.
It has nothing to do with what we're talking about. I'm going to drag someone I work with real quick. I'm not going to use names. One person I work with said
Patrick.
It was not Patrick. It was no one at Waypoint. It was Vice general Vice situation. Someone was leaving Vice because they had another opportunity or they had like another thing. They were leaving Vice. I know why they were leaving. I'm not saying why they were leaving. And this is someone who this person, they said, yeah, I was just talking to my partner, I was just talking to my ex-partner and my husband, by which they meant the same person. And which was like, if you don't know them, you don't know what their situation is. That's an adequate response. What another person in that room said was, "So wait, do you still file your taxes together?" And then for 10 to 15 minutes, just drilled in. What was that like? Oh, so they weren't from this country originally. Like, just drilled in. It was the most awkward conversation I was ever a part of.
Oh, so the ex-partner wasn't a present husband.
No.
It was
Yes. Ex-partner, present husband, but they're not partners anymore. They're not together, but they're still married.
Oh, I understand.
You see what I'm saying?
Okay. Yeah.
And
how did they file their taxes?
Oh, see, fucking Keith, goddamn it.
Just before we move on, real quick, Allie, you edit is an edited cast.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cut this out. This is only for y'all in the live audience.
Wow.
But speaking of jobs and Pomona,
yeah,
Jess got hired there next year.
Hey!
Wow!
Huge congrats! Amazing.
For like really good money for a 1-year position for that. I mean, it's not like good money for like a job that's going to take that much time, but considering like, I think adjuncting can pay as low as like $1,500 a class. She's doing
sure can.
pretty well, yeah.
Hell yeah, that's huge. Congrats. That's really exciting. I have a reason to go back out to that place now. There's a good comic
we'll
shop.
hang out with you in LA.
Yeah, but like, is there a good comic shop?
Maybe. I don't know. The comic shop I like closed.
See, we're gonna go to Pomona. Congrats to Jess. Tell Jess congrats, please.
I will.
Briefly, because you had actually a good point before we got way sidetracked, Art. Which was play D&D. I just really want to underscore for Riley, like, if you're GMing it, you get to make that game whatever the fuck you want.
Yeah.
And you can lead them to the parts of D&D that you think are still interesting and can focus in when you see them get excited and be like, aha, here's a direction I can go with to get them off this shit and onto like my handcrafted artisan pizza. You know?
Mm-hmm.
So All right.
Thin crust, deep dish, any size crust you want.
Damn, any size. All right, we're going to keep moving. This one comes in from Tor. She says, I've been playing in a weekly 5th edition campaign for years. We all spend a lot of time thinking and talking about the game outside of play, and sometimes I'll veer into fan fiction. What happened to that NPC after we left them? What hijinks did my character get up to before we met her? Although I think of these exercises as happening outside of canon, I know that as a player, my imagination influences the game. It's tough to avoid stepping on my GM's toes, especially when he knows more about this world that he built than we do. Usually, I know my role as a fan. I know the line between the thing I love and my own thoughts. When I'm a player and a part of a thing, I feel my role as a fan getting blurrier. This may not be applicable to your experiences with Friends at the Table specifically, both because it's so collaborative and because you're putting out an actual product, but do you have any thoughts on this relationship between being a fan and being a player? Have you had to reckon with it before? Thanks, Tor. I am going to talk last, because I want to know what y'all think as players here. I definitely have thoughts about this, but I'm
if
curious.
I came to you and you said that I was stepping on your toes, I would be so mad. I would be mad for I would tell everyone I met that week about how bad I was.
Like if you come to me with what? I have like Hadrian thoughts, and I'm like, no.
Yeah, and you were like, I would just be pissed for like a week.
So this person you're saying is in her rights to like be thinking outside
Absolutely.
of. Yeah. Uh-huh.
This is like it's a collaborative effort. You have like there's no like knows more about the world than you do. It doesn't exist. Like it's not like it's Germany. Like I don't know anything about Germany.
Tor, if you're in the chat, I just need to clarify. I don't know if you are, but if you are, is it Germany? Does the game take place in Germany, and is your GM German?
Wait, and then also, are you not German / know nothing about Germany?
Because if so, I think we found an exception.
Yeah, I mean, if that's true, this is like if you're playing some like Crusader realistic, Dynasty Warriors thing. I lost my
well, that's
my, like Crusader there.
Crusader Kings Dynasty Warrior sounds great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I've been playing that a lot, and.
You have.
Yeah,
you literally
it's
have.
really good. Not only have I been playing it, but I forgot most of the stuff that I learned about Romance of the Three Kingdoms. So I've been listening to a Romance of the Three Kingdoms podcast while I've been playing it.
Wait, which one?
It's called Romance of the Three Kingdoms podcast.
Great name.
Number 3 kingdomspodcast.com.
Is it good?
It's good. Yeah, it's good because I saw a couple, and a few of them were like. A guy like a white guy who read the book and did a podcast about it or something, and then this one was like it's specifically about like he's from China and he's like I'm highlighting the stuff that is super influential that like has stuck around like that other people aren't covering. There are absurdly detailed resources on his website, like keeping track of who died and when. There's a flow chart of everybody's relationships to everybody else. It is wild. Also, all these dudes suck so bad. It's great. They all suck. Even the ones who even like the guy that everyone's like, this is the good guy.
Liu Bei?
Even he is
Liu Bei fucking sucks.
Worst. He fucking sucks. He sucks so bad. I didn't get to this part, but somebody tweeted at me that like his friend fed him his wife because they were out of meat. And
Yo!
Liu Bei was like, thank you, excellent job.
Fuck.
It's outrageous. Keith. Yeah.
Can you give me a heads up next time? Before cannibalism? Yeah. Before misogynistic cannibalism next time? That'd be...
Yeah, no, you're right.
I had a little factoid about the Three Kingdoms stuff, and now it's like that. I'm just going to say it. Did you know the saying that we have, which is, speak of the devil?
Oh, I know this one. Yeah, this is great.
The fucking Chinese equivalent is speak of Cao Cao and he appears. And it's like, can you imagine like your name in other cultures? The version of that saying with you is the devil. Love it. So good.
Well, I mean, how could you ever think to move your armies as swiftly as Cao Cao?
So you truly must be demonic in mental nature. Anyway, I need answers to this question and not through Three Kingdoms shit.
I had something that I was gonna say about it. What was the even question? Jesus Christ. Oh,
Headcanon as a player, and like if there is a line between out of character and in character, and bringing your ideas, etc.
I guess my the thing that I'm curious about is how much is she, if at all, trying to connect this stuff in like bringing it into the game and then like like forcing it on people. Like I wrote this thing and we're doing it. Like I don't think it's not what it seems like it's happening.
Right.
I guess that would be a point where I would consider it stepping on not just the GM's toes but everybody's toes. Because like Art's defense of this was that it's collaborative, and so but then it works the other side too, which is like you should be doing this collaboratively. But that's I think you would have to be like extremely extremely other-sided for that to even be the case.
Allie.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah, I think there's definitely like it's the weird part of this question for me is being like, I know my role as a fan, and I feel like this is getting blurry in the tabletop game I'm a part of because you're a part of it.
Right.
You're allowed to have
Right.
those ideas
Yes.
and like make those decisions and suggest them, and they might get vetoed. I feel like I've certainly said things about my character, other characters that you've said no to, Austin, but whatever.
I'm sure that's true, right? Like, but what I haven't done is made it so that you still come to me with those ideas.
Right.
Because most of the time what I go is like, ooh, here's how we can make that work with what I do know is true about the world, or what I've already started teasing, especially,
Yeah. There's also kind of the boundary here, which is like, there's a difference between you saying like, oh, this NPC after we met them became a doctor. I really want him to be I want to go to the hospital and see him later. Like that's different.
Right.
The GM can kind of close the door on that, but like for you to be like, well, I don't want to tell the GM that my character used to do this stuff before this game because like that's your side of the table as far as I'm concerned. Like
And
there's
no, you finish your point.
Yeah, there's some kind of things like when you think of like a GM with a little folder in front of them and they're like, this, I have control of this stuff. Like some of the stuff about your own character can like, that's, it's your board. You're okay there. You can make those decisions, but not that you should be like hiding it. But I feel like, if it's your character, you have
the one note there, and then I'll come to you, Keith. The thing I just want to say there is and I've been on both sides of this for sure, where it's like, I know more about my characters than the GM does. My one thing there that's happened to me before is, 6 months into a game, my GM says something that contradicts my backstory that I've kept to myself. And if it's something where I'm like, wait, no, that doesn't line up because XYZ, I have this complete different relationship with that faction that just hasn't come up before. And ideally, the GM is supposed to be like, oh, cool, let's talk about what you have in mind there. But I've definitely had GMs before who were just like, well, no, you didn't say it, and so now it's not true. And I don't know, Tor, what your GM is like. And so there is a value in saying, I've been thinking a lot about like what my character thinks about the Black Eagles. Or whatever, right? Like whatever the name of the faction is. Like I think before I joined the party, XYZ happened. Is that cool? And giving them that, especially if you're like, oh right, the next like big adventure is the campaign against the Black Eagles. Better to get on page with that stuff ahead of time. And your GM, I want to just come back to what all of you have said, which is like when it's your character, outside of the GM saying like, wait, but you are from the culture that the Black Eagles hate. How is it that you were part of like their highest ranking group of assassins? What outside of like literal, and even in that case, the answer should be like, well, here's the cool reason why I was the exception to the rule. You know what I mean? Like it should be about bringing both sides of the table together and finding the way in which your ideas influence their storytelling and their world building, and not just the other way,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, by all means. Like I feel like you should have these ideas. It's great that you have these ideas. The more that you're thinking about this game, the better, because if you're having fun doing it, do it. But like, if you're having them, you should communicate them as soon as possible and not like feel weird about that. Because sure, some of them are going to get vetoed. Your GM might say like, "Oh, that guy Tom, I had other ideas for that character. Maybe you'll run into him later." But if you come up to him and say like, "I love Tom as an NPC.
Right.
I really think it would be great if he worked at this hospital after we met him." Like, sometimes they're gonna say no.
Even that's kind of right, but even that's
Yeah.
cool. I would fucking love it if
Yeah,
y'all
like-
were like I don't think. So Devar showed back up, right? And I feel like if you go through our Discord chat somewhere in the last 3 months, someone's like, "What's up with Devar? How's Devar doing?" And I was like, "You know what? How is Devar doing? What is Devar up to?" And what if you had come to me and was like, "Hey, what if Devar was doing this and it was a good idea?" I'd be eager. I'd be like, "Wow, that's a really cool
Yeah.
idea. Let's do it." You know what I mean? Yeah, maybe Devar's a doctor now. I hadn't thought about that. And
Devar's
AU
great. We tried to invite.
Yeah,
Anime.
and he was like, "No, I'm good."
Yeah, which makes sense. That's very Devar.
Yeah.
A slight spoiler, but I'm like so desperate to just throw that party that Hella wants to
I
throw
know.
because I just want Devar to be there.
Please do.
Oh well.
Anyway.
But yeah.
Yeah.
One final thing here, which
Please.
is like, if you listen to the show, you like can hear how desperate GMs are to like have their players be interested in their stuff. So
Wow,
like,
thanks, Allie. Damn.
If there's one thing we know about GMs, that they're thirsty for literally anything.
Fun interaction between good friends is what we're thirsty for.
I'm just saying, there's no reason to hold back.
Yes.
Um.
Yes. The thing that I hope I'm not sensing, Tor, is that you feel like you have ideas that don't that feel somehow contradictory to the play at the table. And if you do, then for me, that's all the more reason to have those conversations with the GM, because that will help the GM play a game with you that is in line with what you want. Being like giving the GM insight into what you think is cool about your character or NPCs is like, I mean, you're already doing it, right? If this is a good GM and you were like, we talk in the chat and I thought about how Devar became a doctor, Devar is going to fucking show up again. You're equivalent. And like the GM should be picking up on that stuff, even if it is not canon until it's said at the table. If that makes sense. But also, here's the other thing you can do. You can just say, what if the things we say, what if we have a different like chat in the Discord where we talk about shit that's canon? And we say like, is this like, ooh, this is a good idea. Let's just make that canon. You can just do it. It doesn't have to happen. We lean on the microphone because we do release a show. But if we didn't, do you know how many weird side like RP conversations we would be doing like privately of just characters talking to each other and like me giving updates about various NPCs in the world and shit like all the time, 100%. So I think like you should, if you're interested in that, you should explore that with your group and see if that's something that would fit into their lives or that other people are interested in. Because as anyone, I think, I don't know if only Allie and I have done that style of like online RP, but like it's really fun to do that style of like asynchronous like world building and character building where like the stakes are not do you kill a dragon, and the stakes are more like we had an intense conversation or or whatever, you know? So that is my thought here. I think, is that it? Let me see. Do we have one more? We have one more. This is from Jack, not our Jack, a different Jack, who says, I've been running a campaign for a few close friends for a few years now. The focus is on the 3 players' main characters. However, for the past year, we have moved away to do a small vignettes on other characters throughout the world. Soon, we will be returning focus back to the original 3 characters. I just want to say really quick, it is a wild lightning storm in New York right now. And so if I lose connection, it's because I've lost power. It is like nonstop lightning. It is unbelievable. So
remember that blue glow?
I do. I could see it from the window I'm looking out right now, where now I just see nonstop lightning. So
yeah, that's how I first heard it. Before it was on Twitter or whatever, you were like, "There's a glow."
It was the scariest. It was. I can't even get into it. I'm going to continue Jack's question instead. Soon, after doing these years of vignettes, or this year of a bunch of little vignettes, we will be returning focus back to the original 3 characters. But I have a few concerns. Mainly, when we last saw these characters, they were not in a good place. There was fighting in the party, and oftentimes major disagreements and arguments would erupt. To be clear, the problem isn't that my players have any problems with each other, or that they would prefer a more combat-focused, less story-based game. The issue is that they do enjoy the story, and conflict between these characters is natural based on their own individual motivations. As a GM, how do you balance wanting to see characters and players do what makes sense for their motivations, and come to what is the natural endpoint of a relationship, and wanting to see the story about the world that you've been building together for such a long time come to fruition? Basically, how do I deal with character conflict in a way that still feels true to the narrative? What do y'all think on this one about character conflict? As the thunder rumbles right outside my window.
I heard that one. That was huge.
Uh-huh.
I feel like, I mean, Farrah's a character that's had some character conflict.
Yeah.
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 And I haven't, because I just heard this question for the first time, so I haven't put like a ton of thought into how it happened that the story is still moving forward, but it totally did. I mean, I guess there was a big flash forward.
There was,
that probably
right?
helped.
Yeah.
But like, it for me, like, I would have hated it if like Farrah was getting mad at other player characters and you were like, we've got to do this story, you can't hate them, or like, can you tone
that would
it,
have been the worst.
or like, can you tone down this so that we can, keep the party together or something. And it's like, no, Farrah went off on his own, and it, like, you brought the story through despite these characters fighting. Like, I feel like the best way to do it is to tie the story, like, figure out how them fighting affects what the story is going to be.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I was sorry, I wasn't sure if you had more there, but I think that, like, yeah, I think that it can totally work. I think that they're, like, friends of the table examples of this, like, especially if you're going back to this time period, like, when we did the counterweight finale and it was like, suddenly all of these people are part of different factions, that was, like, a big thing, and that was a big way to show that, like, yeah, there were disagreements there, and people kind of had to go their own way, but then still have to kind of join together for this central thing. But even if it's on, like, a smaller scale, like, something like Streets of Fire comes to mind, which is a movie that we just watched, which is also just like, that was 4 people.
Yeah.
2 of those dudes definitely hated each other, but, like, sometimes you just have to go do the damn thing.
Yeah.
And, like, characters can have individual motivations, and those motivations can be, I fucking hate that guy, and also I just have to do the damn thing.
Right.
And finding the places in the story where that's going to be interesting, and, like, leaving pathways for one character to, like, maybe they're all going to go get this thing and somebody else thinks the thing should go to somebody else.
Right.
Also another counterweight example, right?
Well, that's
like,
also the first Friends of the Table thing. That's Phantasmo Hadrian about the book,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
it's
exactly,
the
yeah.
first thing is these people don't like each other, and there's a fight about that thing, but they are still, like, in the main forward thrust of the story, right?
Yeah.
Well, but the flip side of this is, like, I never, not once in this whole season have I thought that Pharaoh had to do anything. There have been 3 or 4 very distinct times when, like I almost just had Pharaoh quit. Like, just like, no, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. I don't want to be around these people. They drive me crazy. They're judgy. They're, like, mad that I'm mad. Fuck this. I'm out. Like, that almost happened a real handful of times. But that's like the I don't know, what I was going to say was that's like the promise of these games for me, which
Right.
I don't know if that's necessarily an overstatement or not, but, like, is like I'm a character being presented with things and I get to react the way that I want, and and we make a story out of it. And that story can totally be that one of the characters hates everyone else so much that they fucking go. They just leave.
Right.
So
So the most important thing for me here is like the players are all on the same page and they're all happy to be playing. I think it's worth having a conversation, Jack, with your players and say, do we want this to be a situation? Put the options on the table, and kind of say, hey, we could play the thing where this is like a tense road trip story where like the final act is these people who have a greater cause in mind, but like are kind of like glaring at each other the whole time and sniping at each other, and whether they resolve those conflicts or not, who knows? Or you could have like the game where these characters like go their separate ways and you end up doing the counterweight finale thing of there being a kind of bigger picture faction conversation and having these characters still interact, but interact at such broader time scales and like in passing with each other, where you start to play the game in like just a different scale. And I don't know what your game is, so I don't know if that even fits for you. Or the third thing is, and this is something that I think doesn't happen enough, you could sideline these characters. You've already been playing these vignettes for a year. What if you picked a handful of those characters from those vignettes and are like, this is our new main party, and the three of you can come up, or the four of you total can come up with like what your old player characters are doing, and maybe there'll be moments when you still like slip back into them, and where like each player ends up having multiple player characters in a sense, for certain sequences or certain scenes or certain games. But it's also totally possible, depending on like where you're at in this story, that you kind of say, hey, those characters are such big fucking deals now, and they're working at such odds. They're working more like NPCs than they are like player characters, except you keep them in player characters' hands, right? You think about like doing a faction game with those characters. Everything is on the table for you. Like the thing that I sense from the question that I want to make sure you don't feel like you have to do is like, how do I make it so they want to be in a dungeon together? How do I make it so like,
No.
you don't have to do that. They can hate each other and either fight the dragon together or not. You don't have to give up the great tension you've built, because that's what a tabletop role-playing game is supposed to be or something,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I think you really nailed it with like you can move these characters on either in all or in part, I guess like spoiler warning too, but like if Twilight Mirage was going to go on for another 6 months, I would have needed a new character.
Right. For a little while there, at
and
least.
Like sometimes you get to a point where all of your drama is crescendoed and like it's not interesting to see, not every movie needs a sequel.
Right.
You hit the end of your arc and it's like, yeah, that's it. I don't want to make Lethal Weapon 2,
They did. They made that one, though. They made like 3 or 4 of those. Art.
But should they have? Setting aside that Mel Gibson's the worst, like that character,
right?
Done after a while.
I think it really started to tank around Live Free or Lethal Weapon.
Better than Lethal Weapon with a Vengeance, or any other thoughts on this before we wrap up? All right. That is going to do it for us tonight. Thank you all for hanging out. I'm going to enjoy this thunderstorm. If you have questions, you can send them in to tipsathetable@gmail.com. And as always, you can support the show by going to friendsattetable.cash. Do we have any announcements? Do you have anything we want to say before we wrap up? Are you missing anything?
We might have something fun for people on Tuesday.
What's on Tuesday?
Oh my god. We might have that Google form. How about that?
I truly have no idea.
Oh, are we doing that then?
That was the last.
Oh, is
date
that
we
on
discussed
Tuesday?
for it.
We all know what it is except for Austin. We all are getting it.
That's fun.
Do we all know?
I don't know at all.
But Al, you know, right?
I do know. Yeah.
Is it in that chat that we're in?
But yeah.
We could put that in a Google form. Trying to. Okay. Wait, no, this doesn't. Okay.
We're firing Austin. That's it. That's
Via Google form.
Yeah, it's
a
unfortunate.
vote on whether or not Austin should stay. It's gonna be a 900 number.
Gotcha. Fantastic. All right. I think I should stay. We should do a clap.
Oh, we missed 10 minutes of marriage.
We also missed
Ref.
10,
What
10,
is it?
10. It's not marriage prep.
I said ref.
Oh.
Marriage ref. I don't.
Marriage, count marriage,
Marriage
rescue.
Yeah.
You want to clap
You want
at?
to do 11-11?
Why did you just
Oh,
clap?
did we not say?
We
Did we not say
didn't.
10, 11?
Wait, 11.
We're going to do 11 seconds?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Make a wish. All right.
I wish that I clapped on time.
Oh, good wish.
Well,
All
you
right.
told us, so it won't come true.
Yep, that's it. Cursed forever. Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.